There we go. We are about 5-6 lines to the bottom. We are Tonu Rabban HaHoylech L'Beis Avos. It's actually 4 lines from the bottom. Bein Mavrin Al Mita Skufos. The Sudas Havara is not on Mita Skufos. It's on the floor. So Tonu Rabban HaHoylech L'Beis Avos. If someone goes to the Beis Avos, Im Hayal Liboy Gaspoy. And there's a shayla in the Rishonim what this means. One shot is if the person going was very friendly and comfortable with the oval, then you have rual midas kfuyos. Then the friend will sit on the floor or on not really the floor on an overturned bed. The friend will sit with his close friend who's an oval. The mlav you have rual midas kfuyos. But if the person being menachem or bringing the sudas havara is not so comfortable with his friend, so then he'll sit on a regular bed. That's one shot. Another shot is if the oval is a little bit too comfortable and happy, then he should sit on the floor because he needs to realize that he's an oval. But if he's sitting bachno and he's bavelus, then the sudas havara could be on mita skufos. So the Gemara has an interesting story. Rava Isra B'Milsa. I put up the water. You don't have to take off. I'm saying Rava Isra B'Milsa. No, don't you have to go. I just wanted to. I did something at least. Rava Isra B'Milsa. Rava here. Mati came to learn. Rava Isra B'Milsa. Rava had a chwan u'tzlan. He became a noble, and Ola Gabe Abba Bar Marsa. Abba Bar Marsa came to be Menachem or to bring him the Sudas Havara. The Hava Abba Bar Menyumi, who's also Abba Bar Menyumi. Rava Zokif. Rava sat on a bed that was upright. In other words, Rava felt that either I'm not that close with Abba Bar Marsa, like the first shot, or like the second shot. Rava says I'm Bavelus. I'm Mamish Bavelus. I could sit on a Mita Skupa. But what happened is Abba Bar Marsa came and turned him over. Omar, so Rava commented, Kama less badaita lahai tzurva merabodim. This tzurva merabodim doesn't understand how to read the situation properly. Either I'm bavelis, so I can sit on the floor, or I'm not so friendly with you like you think I am, and you're not reading our relationship right. And we should be able to sit on a mita zekufa. Zok the Hail of the Gemara. Tonu Rabbanon. This is also a big shaila what this means. I want to just bring up there's no more portion right on the daf here other than the Lakutei Rashi. So I just wanted to bring up the Lakutei Rashi inside because I hate. Thank you so much, Nancy. I hate just bringing up a Gemara and not even seeing any portion at all on it. So if you look at Lakutei Rashi, the Gemara tells us, let's see where we are. Let's see if I can find it. Where's the whole fucking base at the bottom? So let me see if they have it over here. He doesn't say that. Let's see. It's about it over here. Oh, here it is. Im liboy gaspa. So I'm looking at the Ksav Yad Rashi. A lot of people have it right on the daf, but in the Mesivta, they don't have enough room because there's all the other stuff there. So they have it in the back. It says, Im liboy gaspa, im royin es ha'oval, she'einin noy kederech shar avelim, ela sameachu. If the oval looks like he's too good of a mood, then he needs to sort of be tamped down. So that's when he has to be a mavrin, the yoshim amenachman, amitas kfuyos, kedei sheyomer libo. He should calm down a little bit. That was one shot. And lishnachrina liba gaspa is v'hoy makireyu kroivoi oishushvinoi liba gaspa yachad yoshev l'oretz itoy al mitakfur. If the menachem is very close with the oval, then he could join him on the floor. So either Pshat, Rava felt that Abba Bar Marsha didn't read the relationship properly, or didn't read Rava properly as the Rava's attitude towards Avelis. So this is also a shayla. What this means? If someone is traveling when he's an oval, the halacha is im yochel l'mayit be'eskay, if he could be memayit in business. So he was traveling, and there was an oval. He became an oval while he was traveling. That's one shot. Then he should be memayit in his asik. And Rashi says so someone is traveling, maybe traveling for business, and he was very able, but he's in the middle. He should try to be memayit in business, and he should do it with other people. So he shouldn't be doing things on his own. He should be doing things together with other people. It shouldn't be so noticeable, the violation of Avedas. But Tosfos gives us a little bit more detail. Tosfos Pirish B'Kuntrus B'Schayrasa. Near the B'Davar Ovid Kamer. So right off the bat, Tosfos tells us this must be referring to a Davar Ovid, because if it's not a Davar Ovid, he shouldn't be doing any business at all. But even if it's a Davar Ovid, he should still be Memayit B'Eskay. V'chein Pirish Leil, Gabi Al Kalamesim Kulam Roitza Memayit B'Eskay Rotza Meini Memayit. The Gama Rav Pirish Leil B'Davar Ovid Oisha B'Tzidim B'Sech Pesach. Near the Pirusha. So according to the way Rashi is learning that we're talking about the Davar Ovid, and even then you have to be Memayit the Hachamari B'Ava V'Imai. It's speaking about Ava V'Imai, because everybody else, if it's a Davar Ovid, there's no problem with doing Schoira. The only issue is Ava V'Imai, where even if it's a Davar Ovid, we learned from one shot that one shouldn't engage in that. But since he's traveling on his way, and I guess he's in the middle of a business trip, we allow him to continue on with the group that he's with if he's not able to minimize the schar that he's doing. The Bishar makes him in my cloud. If it wasn't of Vimoy, there are no restrictions. If it's a Davar, it's not a problem. I mean, right if he doesn't want it. Now, Tosha has another interesting shot with Pum Fakert. The Mari Hach Bishar Mason. Maybe we could learn that this is speaking by a regular mace. So a regular mace by Davar Ovid, he's allowed to do schar. So what's pshat? So Tosha comes at it from exactly the opposite angle, 180 degrees opposite. If someone is occupied, he's preoccupied because he's doing business, he can't focus on the Avelis properly. Therefore, so only him someone like that has to minimize his work. You know why? Because he's preoccupied, he's forgetting about his Avelis. He's not even in the Beis Ovel, he's traveling around. Someone who is sitting by Avelis, he doesn't have this problem. The only reason why we're restricting his ability to engage in business is because he's distracted. And then Tosfos brings a third shot is that we're talking about somebody who doesn't have what to eat. So therefore, he has to go out to make parnasa, so he should have what to eat. Since he's traveling, and he doesn't have his pantry with him, he's traveling, he needs to work, he needs to come up with some money to buy food. So therefore, people normally buy more food when they're traveling. In his house, his wife goes shopping for him. But when he's on his own, when you're on your own and you're traveling, so you go by the gas station, by the rest area, you stop up, and you buy whatever you need. You buy more than you would normally buy. And if he was home, so these are the different shatim in this Gemara. You can't be memayit in the Zayzik. He should just work together with them, so it shouldn't be him doing something exclusive. Tana Rabbanan, Zokta Hiliga Braisa. Meimosai Koifin Amitas. At what point does the chiyuv for Kriyas Amita start? And there are those who learn that this is talking about all of the Hilchos Avelos, and the reason why they're represented by Kriyas Amita. The Meiri says because this is one of the most important shows of Avelos. That's why we talked about Kriyas Amita. But there are those who say that the Avelos we know only starts Kashis Tamagoila, when the mace is buried, and could be Kriyas Amita starts even earlier. And what does the Brisa say? When does it begin? When the mace leaves the house. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. Like all the other availers, when they cover over the kaver. Maisa, Shemesh Rabbi Gamliel Azak. When Rabbi Gamliel Azak was nifter, Kivin Shiyatim Pesach Beisai, as soon as the Avelim left, as soon as the mace was taken out of the house, Amalan Rabbi Eliezer told him, now you have to make Kfiyas Amita, like what Rabbi Eliezer Paskin taught. The Kivin Shenistam Agoyel, and then after Stimus Agoyel, then Rabbi Shua came over to them and told them, Amalan Rabbi Shua, Fumis Nesechem. Amalan told them, Rabbi Eliezer got to us first. Kfar Kafinu al Pizakan, we already were kaifin amita because Rabbi Eliezer already told us to do it on the way out, going to the Levaya. Thank you. Tanya Rabban. The Amosai Zoikvin Esamitais the Erev Shabbos. The halacha is before Shabbos, the Avelim stop their Avelis to prepare for Shabbos. So how early can they already stop their Avelis? Zakt Gemara Minaminchu L'mayla. And what Minaminchu L'mayla means is a very big shaila in the Rishonim, Tosfos right over here. So if we look at Tosfos, Minaminchu L'mayla, Pirush B'Tosfos, Harav, the Misafkalei is at Mincha Gedola, which is several hours before Shabbos, or if it's Mincha Ketana, which is just moments before Shabbos. The Mikodim L'chein, Eine Yosy V'la. We wouldn't be allowed to sit, an Oval would not be allowed to sit on a regular bed till right before Shabbos. Even if he could start making his house for Shabbos and he could start turning his beds over, even if you hold Mincha Gedola, you wouldn't be able to sit on the bed anyway. Nearly, the Mikan Samchu Shalei Leishav Al Gav Ksisav V'Safsel. It's from here where the poskim are soymech not to sit on a chair or a bench. Even though you don't mamish have a raya, the shiny mita hoil b'tzorach kfiyah l'mitzina kfiyah b'kisa v'safsel. But from the fact that we're discussing turning over beds before Shabbos, it seems to indicate that one is not supposed to sit on the high chair. We don't do kisa because we're afraid we're going to spook. Over two reasons: either because we're going to spook the goyim thinking we're doing kishiv, or the goyim working in our house, and B is because our beds, even if we turn it over, they won't be on the floor because we have headboards and footboards. Okay.
Yosy, when we keep talking about beds, are we not talking about, people used to sit in their living areas, not in their bedroom, on bed? What?
Like a shea lounge.
Something like that. Yeah, is that what we're not talking about? We're talking about the real bed where we go to sleep. Are we?
I think we're talking about what they used to sit on.
Yeah, what they used to sit on. They're just calling it beds, right?
That's right.
We don't call these things beds.
No. I mean, even when they ate, they sat on a bed.
That's right. Okay, just to be clear.
The only person that I know actually does sit on his bed and eat on his bed was Rav Steinman Zatzal. If you went into his apartment, he had a table and his bed was his chair. That's how small it was. Omer Rabba Barhuna, Aval Pikein, Eina Yoshev Allah Achetechsha. Nevertheless, even though one could turn his bed back over, nevertheless, one is not allowed to sit on it until it's dark. The question really is how early can they start preparing for Shabbos in the house? Ulumutoy Shabbos, Pamata Shabbos, it's right back to Avelis. Even though the shiva is over tomorrow morning, so it's just for a little bit. Nevertheless, Mata Shabbos they have to make Kfiyas Hamita once again. Tanu Rabban, when someone does Kfiyas Hamita, loy mitasa bilvadu koifa. Every single bed in the whole house he has to turn over. So this adds support to what David is saying. Is the reason why you have to turn over every bed is because you might sleep in every bed. Normally, a person is not going to sleep in every bed. A person sleeps in his bed. But if it's like chairs, like couches where people sit, yes, it's possible the oval will sit anywhere in his house. Therefore, every single chair in his house must be turned over because he's not allowed to sit on the chair. And what if there's 5 brothers, umeis echad, and one of them was nifter? So they're all available for this brother who's nifter. Kulon kaifin the Allah to make kviya samita. And the lesson from this halacha is kviya samita is not a din in the mace; it's a din in the oval. So therefore, each oval in their house has to have their bed turned over. What if it was a mita that was not a bed? It was made as a cabinet. It was made as a shelf that you put things on. So that's not something that one would sit on. Therefore, ain't tzarech l'chafos. Dargish. What about a dargish? And there's going to be a lot of talk now in the next couple of lines in the Gemara till the end of the Amud as to exactly what a dargish is. So for now, we'll just call it a dargish. Ain't tzarech l'chafos. That doesn't have to be turned over. Elazoikva, you could stand it up. I'm assuming it's like when you stand up a mattress, so you can't lie on it. Shimon ben Gamliel Aimer, dargish. What do you do by a dargish? Mater es karvitov v'hunoifel me'elav. So this dargish was a frame that had a leather horizontal surface that was tied to the frame. So you just untie it, and then the piece of leather just falls down. That's what Reb Shimon ben Gamliel said. So now let's see what a dargish is. My dargish. Omarula, what a dargish is arsa de gada. What is an arsa de gada? I believe Rashi says, Mita shemeyachtin oisa lemazel toif. It's a good luck bed. Vein mishtamshim baklum. It's actually not sat on. Elameyachtin oisa lishreis mazel tov. It brings good mazel into the house. So the Rishonim talk about how is someone allowed to do it. Why isn't this called Darkei Mori? Why isn't this called superstition? There's a whole bunch of different opinions in the Rishonim about this. One of the Rishonim says that having an extra bed in the house shows that we're organized and neat people. We have where to put our stuff. And one of the simanim of Anias, something that brings in the malach for Anias, is when there's dirt and mess and clutter. But if everything's neat and organized, that invites in the malach that brings in ashiras. So someone who has a cabinet means he's going to be organized because he has where to put stuff. That was one shot. Another shot is it brings in, it's like Kisa Shel Eliyahu. You're showing that you always have a place in your house for Eliyahu Novi. Another shot was that it's like showing that we want to have more children. We already prepared a bed. So it's not nichush. It's actually a preparation. It shows mazel. Omalei Rabba. So if that's the case, if that's what a dargish is, that it's not a bed that people normally sit on, elamayata gabe melech. We learned halacha gabe melech who's bavelis. Vitnan kol ha'om mesubin ala oretz. Everybody sits on the floor. Who meisav ala dargish? He sits on the dargish. So frank the Gemara. If normally nobody sits on the dargish, even a king, up until this point, the king wouldn't have sat on the dargish. And now, because he's an oval, you're going to let him sit on the dargish? That's not logical. The Gemara wants to suggest. Zok the Gemara, that's not shver. That's not shver. Maska Florabashi. My kusha. That's not a kasha. Midi de hava achilu ushtia. It's no different than achilu v'shtia. Dara idna lo yachlini v'lo yeshkine. Up until this point, no one brings food to the oval, or to a melech. No one brings food to an oval. No one brings drink to an oval. And hashta uchline v'ashkine. So yes, things are different now. Now he's a novel, so things are different. So you can't ask me a kasha why a king would sit on a dargish. Ali kasha, if you want to have a kasha on this sugya, talk kasha. This is what you would ask. The time we learned, dargish einoi tzorech lachafoisoi elazoikfoi. A dargish, you don't have to turn it over; you stand it up. Frek the Gemara, the arsa, the gada. If it's this bed that's for good mazel, am I einoi tzorech lachafoisoi? Why don't you have to turn it over? Hatani we learned. When it turns over his bed, it Ela kol mitois sheyesh loy b'sheich beisoy koifer. So why should the arsa, the gada, be any different? Right? That's not a kasha. Umay kasha. Midi hava amita amiyuchedes lokenim. Of course, it's mistaber to say that you shouldn't have to turn over the arsa the gada, because it's not something that's normally made to lie on or to sit on. Just like amita, that's miyuchedes lokelim. If it's just a cabinet, of course you don't have to turn it over. The Tanya we learned, and you start like kasha. If you feel you must have a kasha, kasha. This is the kasha that you can ask on this sugya. Shimon ben Gamliel Omer Dargish Matir Karvitav v'hunoifel meilo. You undo the ties that holds the mattress or the box spring to the frame, and then it'll just fall down. If you hold that it's an arsha degada, meaning it's not a real bed, it just looks like a bed because it's there to show good muscle. My karvit in this place, it shouldn't even have this. It wouldn't even have those components. It would just have a flat top, but it wouldn't have this type of arrangement that you would normally sleep on. So that's now our problem. What is an arsha degada? If it's just this decorative bed, then it wouldn't make sense that Reb Shimon ben Gamliel would have talked about untying the box spring from it, because it wouldn't have a box spring. So Yosy Rabin, Amalei Humi Rabbanim, and who was this Rav who told us what it is? V'Rav Tachlifa bar Marava Shnei, the Havashchiach b'Shuka Digeldoi. He would frequent the shuk where the people who made leather would offer their wares, and because of that, he was familiar with leather and how this would be relevant to a dargish. And this is what he said: my dargish, arsa ditzala. It's a traveling bed. It was a collapsible bed. You know, we have those beach chairs that like collapse into a very thin tube that we all use. So it was a collapsible bed. So basically, the bed frame and legs all popped apart, and then there was a flat piece of leather that was tied to the perimeter frame that was all put together when you were ready to settle in. It was like a camping bed, and that's what it is. And therefore, you have to stand it up because, in fact, it is something that people could be on. Dargish is siruga mitoichai, mita siruga agaba. So a normal bed, a permanent bed, we learned that they have ropes that go lengthwise and widthwise that are woven through them. But how do those ropes connect to the bed frame? What they do is they go over the bed frame and then they wrap around the actual sideboards or headboards. That's how they were held in place. But this traveling bed was made a little differently. They actually drilled a hole into the sideboards and they put a piece of rope through the hole, which they knotted, so now you can't pull it through on the other side. And then the loose string that they had, they would tie to the leather. They would tie to the leather box spring, and that's what would hold it up. And what Reb Shimon Gamliel was saying is, for a dargish, all you have to do is untie that and allow the leather to fall down to the ground. The reason why we don't turn over those types of beds, because if we turned over those types of beds, then the leather, the top surface of the leather that we want to use would be sitting on the floor on the ground, and that would ruin the leather. So it's because of that they said, Zoikvoi, don't turn it over. Or just untie it and let it fall to the ground, but the top surface, if you turn it over, then its top surface would be touching the ground. That's what we don't want to. That's what we don't want to happen, because it would ruin the bed. Halacha that you just untie the so you somewhat disassemble the bed by untying that piece of leather that we're referring to as the box spring from the frame around it, so it'll fall down. What if you have a bed that it's like our beds, which means the headboard and footboard extend up past the surface of the mattress. So if you turn it over, it's going to be sitting on the headboard. Specifically, what this is talking about is if you had one vertical, let's say you had a vertical board coming up in the center of the footboard and in the center of the headboard, and then they would put a horizontal board across the top of them, and then they would put a shmata over it, which would create like a tent canopy over the bed. So such a bed, if you turn it over, it'll break because those two little posts that are just made to hold up the canopy, they're not going to support the weight of the bed. So because of that, you just stand it up on that side, and that'll be good enough. We're not asking you to break your bed. What if someone slept on a chair, on some big receptacle, like it was part of a grind, it was a machdish, something you grounded, you turned it over, you had like a stool, or al gabe karka, or on the floor itself. Lo yotzi de chivosai. One is not yotzi the chiv of what? So it's not enough just to sit on the floor even. One must sit on an overturned bed. Yet we don't do it anymore. Yeah, it's very interesting. That's right. I was thinking the same thing. The Meiri says this is the most important part of Avelis, yet they decided that they're not doing it anymore. Because Tosh has two reasons. A, our beds don't allow us to do it. And the Gemara does say, if you have that klitamita, you don't have to turn it over. But we don't need to stand their beds up.
I don't think our beds nowadays, even though we think they're more comfortable, maybe it's with the mattress on the floor. We do more on tissue paper.
That's right. But I think the main reason we saw this was because the superstitious people are going to think the Jews are casting some type of spell. And nowadays it's hard to imagine, but in those days they were blood libels. They accused us of crazy things. Okay, Gavalti. Yesterday in the 9 o'clock shir, we were talking about Shvar Malka. We're talking about everyone likes to kill the Jews. So someone told me that he was listening to the shir, right, in our Zoom, but he had a different computer where he was on a Zoom meeting for his office. And they all hear someone saying, kill the Jews, kill the Jews. That's where are you and what are you doing? Okay, Zok Tehel Gemor Vati. Tony Rabban. Mechavdin umarbitin the base oval. You're allowed to sweep the floor in the base oval. Umarbitin was that we said earlier that when the dust is suspended in there, you spray it with water and it keeps the dust down. So that's allowed to be done in the base oval because it's not any type of oiling. It's not a steer. Just keeping things clean. Allowed to do the dishes. All the pots and pans are allowed to be washed, even if we're not ready for the next meal. So it's not just preparing for the next meal; it's just to keep things clean. That's allowed. But you're not allowed to bring the summum into a base oval. That's too much of an oiling. Any freak to Gemara. But Tani Bar Kapara ain't mevarchen loy ala mukma v'loy ala b'samim base oval. You're not allowed to make a bracha. So Baruch Hu Deloy Mavarchina. If it's telling us, if the Allah is telling us that we can't make a bracha, it must be that it's there. Halasuyei ma'isinan. Va'yitzachol should be brought. So it's Gemara loy kasha haba base oval haba base manachim. The base oval means when the mace is still there. When the mace is still there, there can be a bad smell. So therefore, it's important to have the summum over there, and that's where it could be brought. You can have the summum there, but one shouldn't make a bracha. There, it's not allowed at all because we're not worried about a smell. Now, those were showing them who learned Punkverkehrt, but we'll learn the Pashut Shot. When they bring food to the base oval to bring them for the Sudas Avara, loy v'tavla, you can't bring it on fancy dishes. Tavla is a fancy type of platter that you would bring food on. Loy b'askutla, which is also a fancy type of thing. Rashis askutla is a tamchui, so it's a nice platter. Loy b'kanoin, kanoin is a fancy type of box, a fancy type of container. Elabasalim, just simple wicker baskets. They don't say the birchas avelim b'moed. Abel oimdim b'shura, but they still do the shura, which means after they bury the mace, the menachim stand in a row, they walk through menachim, and everyone is menachim. Upoitin harabim, and then they say they let everybody go home, and they don't continue with the birchas avelim. Ein manichin samita barchoif. They don't put the mita in the town square. This means on Cholamoid. Shaloi lahargalos hesped, because we're trying to be mamait hesped, not be marbe hesped. And you never put the mita of a woman in the town square, out covered. In those days, they didn't have coffins; they just had a mace lying there. So because of that, it was not appropriate. And mipnei COVID could mean two things. We're going to learn sometimes a woman has dam coming out of her, so that would be very embarrassing. It would be very not nice if that was happening when the body was out. Or in general, it's not sneezing that a woman's body should be out. Originally, when it came to the base of Oval, this is how it worked. Ashirim bekalta shel kesef. The wealthy people brought platters and trays of silver, v'shalzov and of gold. Anim b'salin netzarim shel arava klufa, and the anim used reed baskets. Or anim is baishim. The poor people were in isbayish. And the question here is, what's happening? Is a pshat that the anim avelim were in isbayish because they were served in simpler dishes than others were served. There are those who learn for carrot. The discussion here is the people who are bringing it on behalf of the avelim. So the wealthy people would bring to the base of. Well, imagine you have a poor family and their wealthy friend brings them sudas havara in the most beautiful kelim. They know that the day might come where they would have to reciprocate, and they don't have the ability to bring their friends back and serve them in the same type of kelim. So it caused already now they're already inspired in anticipation of if we ever have to do this, we're going to be looking very foolish because we're not going to have beautiful dishes with which to serve others. So therefore, they made a takana sheyu akol meviin pisala nitzarim shalarava kluva b'tekvadim shalanim. So this is the first occurrence that I'm aware of takanos, of kiddush takanos, of wedding takanos. So they started with takanos of levayas. They didn't start with the takanos. That's right. That's right. Just the dishes used. That's right. It was all about presentation. But you see, this was the very first takana.
It's true, I say that because what you want, and one of the
Okay, so talking about Tanur Rabbanan. Purishoina, originally Hayamashkim Beveis Avav, Hashirim B'Schuchas Lavana in white glass, which was very, very expensive. V'anim B'Schuchas Tvua, and poor people used cheaper glass, colored glass. Well, you anim is Baishin, and the anim were embarrassed. Everybody have to use styrofoam cups. Could you imagine when by the Levaya they actually had uncovered faces? The body was uncovered. Everyone saw the face of the nifter. That's what it wasn't originally. They covered over the faces of Aniyim. Aniyim were always hungry, so they had black faces. And black face is a big no-no, even in those days. So because of that, there was a problem. So they would cover those Aniyim. But then it became obvious who were Ashirim, who were Aniyim. Well, Aniyim is Baishin. They made a corner that all Mason are covered over. That all Mason are covered over. Okay. It's very interesting. I always thought it wasn't covered on mason to leave it uncovered. The reason why we cover mason is because of this. Because all the time, but now that's how it's done. So it didn't change. Rishaina, how you might see in Ashirim bedargish. Ashirim were taken out in a dargish. I guess it was like a fancier type of bed relative to what the Aniyim were. Aniyim bechalika. And the Niyim were not in a chalika, which Rashi says is a mita shomesim. Basically, it's a stretcher with two, which is what they use nowadays in Israel. It's basically two side poles and straps in between. Well, your Niyim is baishim, and the Niyim were in this baish. His kinushi akoil moitziin bechalika. Everybody uses this chalika, but they call them shonim. B'rishoina hayumanichin es hamugmer tachas choyli ma'ayim mason. If someone died because of stomach issues, naturally there would be a terrible smell from the body. So they would put the summum underneath it to mask the smell. Anybody who ever learned in the mirror in my days and would encounter these Europeans who didn't know what showers were, but they knew what cologne was, will remember for the rest of their lives the putrid smell of BO that's overwhelmed with cologne, and I still gag just contemplating that cocktail. And people who were chaylim ma'ayim, even when they were alive, they're embarrassed because they knew, come their levaya, everyone will go, ugh, what's going on over here? Hiskino, they made a takana, shumanichen tachas akel. They put the samim by every mace, and they kvoiden shall chaylim ma'ayim als covered of chaylim ma'ayim. If Anida passed away, all of the kalim that she touched while she was alive, that was around her, they toiveled because maybe she touched them and she was matama them, so they ought to be toiveled. So women who were nidus were very embarrassed because they knew if they would die, the whole world would know that they're nidus because all of their kalim would be taken out to be washed. I guess not. Hiskinu she matbilin. No, they're only dressed in white when they're in the Shiva Nekiyah. Hiskinu she matbilin al gabe kolanoshim they kvoidim shal nidus chayus. So therefore, they made it the kind that whenever a woman dies, all of the kalim that she was in contact with have to be toilet. Once again, everyone will know that they were tamei. It used to be that the expense of the levaya was so much because of the tachrichim that the the preparation, that it was more painful than the death itself. People abandoned dead bodies because they simply couldn't afford to make the levaya. Gamliel said that when I'm buried, we should only put me in Klei. That's one shot. Another shot is when he buried one of his relatives, he did it that way. And then V'nago Amacharav Lotzes B'Klei. Amar Papa Ba'idna Nog Alma Afilu B'Tzarda Bas Bar Zuzah. Even a canvas that's worth a zuz, very, very simple. We're going to soon see that pishton is everyone's makbet to bury with pishton nowadays. However, there's a shaila. Nowadays, linen is very expensive. Right? Nowadays, pishton is very, very expensive. So the question is should it still use pishton? But it's brought down that pishton pishton breaks kishuf. And there's a special in B'davka to bury with pishton. So why didn't they always bury in pishton? The Tertius, they always did bury in pishton, but they had other things with it. That the Kata Gamliel made was to only use pishton. It's up to Gemara weiter. Amar Papa, ein Moed b'fnei Talmud Chacham. When it comes to a Talmud Chacham, even though normally on Chalamoid we're not maspid, but for a Talmud Chacham they are maspid. Surely Chanukah Purim, which is not on the same level as a regular Yom Tov, surely we could be maspid. That's only if the mess is there. You're not allowed to make a hesped in a different city, in a different place, on Chalamoid, on Chanukah Purim, for a mace that's not there. Is that so? Rav Kahana Sapte le Rab Zvid Minarda Bepum Nahara. Rav Kahana was master Rab Zvid, who was from Narda, and the hesped took place in Pum Nahara, which is not in front of the mace. It was the day that they heard about it, and therefore it's as if it was befun. And therefore they were allowed to be master. Amahula hesped alei. When it says hesped, it means that they're tapping on their hearts. Tipuach, when we use a lotion of tipuach, that is biyah, that means clapping with their hands. And kilos, when we use the word kilos, it's beregel, it's stamping with their feet. Now we'll see where these are used. Hamakalis, one who's stamping with his feet. Lo yikalis besandal, he should not do it with a sandal, which there's actually a shal in the Gesois. If there are those who are gars, lo yikalis, lo besandal, lo beminol, the pnei hasakana. There are those who are dashing this way, which is Toisus is dirsha, Toisus is girsa. Pierce the yachab shari, you're only allowed to stamp barefoot. Tvei, the nizar hate the penny nazik. So there's a shaila. If you have a sandal, which is a soft sole, versus a minnow, which is a hard sole. So there's actually three ways to learn this Gemara. One learns you should only stamp with a soft sole, not a hard sole, because if you stamp with a hard sole, the hard sole might flip up and hit you and hurt you. There are those who only use a hard sole, not a soft sole, because if you use a soft sole, you might stomp on a rock that'll puncture your sole and hurt your foot. And then there's Tosh's gear says only do it barefoot because then you'll for sure be careful where you put your foot and you won't get injured. This is a very important halacha. Once the gives a shakalmit and cup, shuv ein menachamin rishoyin leishav. That's a sign that it's time to go. So there are those who learn it means the renewal with the rosh means that he's already menucham. But there's other pshat means is I had enough of you. Go. So once the Oval gives a shakalmit and cup, the person being menachem should know to go. Everyone is mechuyev to stand up when a nasi comes in out of respect, except for an oval and chayla. If a nasi walks in and people are standing up for him, so the nasi will say shvu, sit down, because they don't have to be standing in the first place. Oval yom rishon, the first day, also lecha mishallah. He's not allowed to eat bread from his own. That's why the sukkah savar has to come from somebody else. The Amalei Rachman will Yecheskel. Because when the Rosh told Yecheskel and the Vu told him not to fear Zich with all of the lachas of Elos, he said V'lechem anashim loy toichel. But that was only for Yecheskel. But vice versa, normally Avelos is you don't need from other people. And there's a shayla if it's just the first suda, if it's the whole day. There's a shayla if it's only bread, if it's any type of food. What's that? Yeah. Rabbi Yosef Mechalvi Sudasai Ladod. They used to swap suits, meaning if Rabbi Yosef was novel, Rabbi would send him food, and if Rabbi was novel, Rabbi Yosef would send him food. And about them, unfortunately, speak out, they didn't have a formal deal. Because if they had a formal deal, Viter, I'm eating for myself, because I had a contract to do it. It was casual. One did it for one, and the other one did it for him. If there's a mace in the city that needs to be buried, everybody's responsible. Kol b'nei ha'ir asurin b'asiyas malacha, because they need to be oisik in the mace. Rav Hamnuna ikla l'derumta. He came to the city. Shama kol shipura t'shechva. He heard an announcement. The lavai that oisik right. They had a lavai announcement. Chaza hanech inchi, and he saw some people. They were just working and they were ignoring the call. Amalu, he said, lahava hanech inchi b'shamta. They should be in chayim. Loi shavcha ika b'masa. Is there not a mess and they're ignoring it? Amrulay, they told him, chaburta ika b'masa. We have a chaber kadisha here. It's taken care of. I don't have to do it myself. Amalahu, he told him, yihachi shari lechu. It's mutter. And the shayla is, does this mean he was matter their chayim? Or does that mean that it's mutter for you to do malacha? You don't have to be oisi because you have a chaber kadisha. Maybe you do amarav. If someone is too passionate with sadness about a mace, it's going to lead to other tragedies. And the Gemara backs it up with a story. She had 7 sons. And Rachmana Litzlan, she lost a son. She wasn't allowing herself to be consoled. She was crying too much about it. Rafuna sent her a message. You have to calm down. It's not good what you're doing. She didn't listen to him and she continued to, for fear, she was very upset. She couldn't calm herself down. He sent her again. If you listen to me, things are going to turn around in your life. Things are going to be good. And if you're going to continue fearing about this child that you lost and you're not going to allow yourself to be consoled, start preparing tachrichem for your next son. Period. In fact, that's what happened. Her next son died. And then, basically, she refused to be consoled one by one, and therefore, she lost all her 7 sons. And now she's alone. You better, since you're still inconsolable, you better start preparing your own tachrichem, umisa, and she in fact was an Afteris. What a tragic story. Al typical mace. Don't cry for a mace, and don't shake your head. In other words, it's another act of availance. And we learned the pasuk to teach us is al typical mace yoyser midai, al tanudalo yoyser michashir. So what is the proper amount of availus? Shloisha yom lebechi, v'shiva lahesbid, u'shloishim legiyot u'lutasparos. You follow the Hilchos Avelos, that is the reasonable amount of time that someone has to be misabel. Mikan ve'elech, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, atem rachmanim bo yoshim imeni. You're not greater rachmanim on him than I was, and this is enough. The pasuk says weiter, b'chu lahaylach. Cry for a haylach. What does that mean? Rabbi Yehuda, where do you say you must limit the crying? That's by a regular nifter. But someone who lahaylach b'loy banim, someone who is nifter from the world without children, for such a person you can cry and cry and cry. He never was he only went if the person was nifter without children. Why? He won't come back. I'm sorry. Is going on a new drasha that we're going to learn. He will not come back to see the land of his birth. This happened to pasuk as follows. Who's not going to ever come back? Someone who did an Aveira and then he repeated the Aveira. Once someone does an Aveira twice, it's mutter for him. Can you argue that just because someone did an Aveira twice, now it's mutter for him? Like he loses his sensitivity towards that Aveira and he's going to continue doing that Aveira. Amar Ablevi, the first 3 days he should feel in fear. He should feel like there's a knife at his back, and he should be in fear. From the third day till the end of the Shiva, is as if there's a sword in the corner of the room. So he's still in danger, but not in such imminent danger. After the Shiva, he should feel that there's always something hiding, something drains in the shuk could be a potential danger for him. I remember learning that it says, "But if a ben zachar was noiled in that mishpacha, then this rabba kol ha mishpacha kula, then all the din dissipates." And you find like Gedolim sometimes the day of there's a ben zachar. Like you told me yesterday with Calvin's right? I know by Rabbi Yaakov, I believe he was nifter that day. There was a ben zachar noilad. So that heals the whole din. All that we learn should be academic, but we should all be zoichet to all the brachas. We should all be in a massive where they shouldn't need to make these takanos, because everybody should have zchukas levama, and everybody should have tavla. Everybody should have berevach, and not need it for shiva. Use it for chasanis. We should have an abundance of everything. We should be able to use it for chasanis. We should be able to make chasanis and have simchas.
Amen. Yeah.
Well.